Yes, you are there, ma'am.
So this is through my mobile. I
Okay.
don't see it on computer where it says that I can join you,
Okay.
join you live. But this is a little inconvenient for me because, I'm holding it in my hand.
Yeah.
I'm still
I
trying to see if I can.
I understand, but I had a session earlier with another author, and she also logged in through her system. I really don't know why is that happening. So this has been done before, definitely on a computer as well. I use mobile just for convenience, but it's very much possible. But
Okay,
uh,
so now I'm doing it on the phone. Let's go ahead with this.
sure, sure. So first of all, ma'am, thank you very much for joining. It's indeed an honor to have an author of your stature at this session. So hello everyone and welcome once again to Kitaabi Baatein. I'm Abhishek, also known as Books Wale Bhaiya. First of all, apologies for this delay, but as I said, it's going to be a very interesting and knowledgeable session. So of course, we are definitely going to have some very interesting and important conversations about India's past, India's heritage, India's educational heritage. So before I start, a brief overview about Sahana ji. So Sahana ji is alumnus of Delhi Technological University, and she made a career shift to writing and editing after moving to Singapore. Her articles have been published in several newspapers and journals such as Reader's Digest, Washington Post, Discovery Channel Asia, The Straits Times, Swarajya, India Facts, and Mind Makers. Sahanaji is on the board of multiple non-profit organizations working in the areas of historical research, traditional Indic knowledge systems, and to assistance to Hindu refugees. She has also won several awards for journalism. Ma'am, so my first question to you, being an engineer, how did you think about moving into writing, and that too something as different or specific as Indic knowledge systems and India's educational heritage?
So namaste to everyone watching this, and thank you so much, Abhishek ji, for inviting me. It's an experience to be on Instagram live because I'm rarely on Instagram. So this is very interesting for me, talking to a phone like this. Yeah, so why did I come from engineering to writing? That's a very common question I get. I think I was always a writer. So right from the day I learned how to read and write, it was as if I always wrote. So I can't remember when I did not read or write. So it was very natural. And engineering, because, well, it is a very respected profession. And in my family, my father is an engineer and
Okay.
all my uncles are engineers. So it was always like I have to reach that level of knowledge because I admire and respect them so much that, and also the way it seemed very glamorous and uh, the way I saw my father working, it seemed very interesting to me. Building bridges, building water supply lines, all that seemed very interesting. So I always wanted to be an engineer. And I didn't see any interference with writing because my father always said, you can always write. What's stopping you
Right.
from writing? Keep writing. So that's how I did engineering. And whatever I learned in engineering has been extremely helpful in the way I analyze, the scientific approach. Because especially in India, where for some reason, the scientific approach was more in engineering and sciences than in the humanities. I
Yes.
don't know why that separation happened. It hasn't happened. It wasn't there in ancient India. It was never separated. And of course, in the Western world, scientific approach is very important.
Right.
At least they make it seem that way. So I kept writing and reading. Of course, reading was giving me all that which helped me to express. And so I kept writing. But so the first job after engineering obviously was an engineering job for the first few jobs. But when we moved to Singapore after marriage, my husband took up a job in Singapore, and I had a small baby. So that's the time when I got back to the workforce. I thought, wait a minute, why don't I do something that I really enjoy, which is
Right.
writing? There was an opening for a magazine on water and wastewater. So that was
Okay.
an international magazine on water management, wastewater treatment called Asian Water, and they were looking for an assistant editor. So, and that's something, a topic which interested me so much, how to manage water resources and all that. So I just went for an interview there in Singapore, and because I had won a number of all India prizes,
Okay.
essay competitions in, that competition success review. I had won many of those all India competitions.
Oh,
So,
wonderful.
so that was in my resume, and they just took me. And then that's how I found myself totally in the world of writing, editing. And it was so exciting, going to different countries, looking at the water problems of that country, writing about it, getting the data, interviewing people. So I was in that for like almost 20 years, and got a good grip of the water issues around the world, water management issues. And then came the shift to history, as you asked me, and that happened when we moved to the US. From Singapore, we moved to the US in 2012. My daughter joined high school, and when I was looking at her textbooks, then I felt that India was being sorely misrepresented. It just was not giving across the picture of India's contribution to the world.
Right.
Because, mind you, I had been reading works of Dr. David Frawley, Dr. N.S. Rajaram, and all these historians who were giving us the real picture of India's history. So I was reading all that, and I knew that this is not how India was, a land of just sati and caste system and
Yes.
low position of women. That was not the India that I knew and read about. So that's when I started writing about Indian history. I think around 2014, 15, first started with a lot of writing on social media, which was very well accepted. And then I became bold enough to write an article, and I didn't face any huge criticism from the people around me. So I thought, okay, I'm on the right track. And then
Right.
slowly ended up reading more and writing a book.
So any particular author or person who inspired you most about, as you talked about Dr. Frawley and Rajaramji, any particular person inspired you the most to write and explore this arena more, or is it an amalgamation of every writer's work?
Many authors, but mainly Dr. N.S. Rajaram and Dr. Frawley. Dr. Rajaram I knew personally because he was my
Okay.
mother's school childhood friend.
Oh,
And
okay.
so uncle used to give a lot of books to my mother, and my mother would pass them on to me. So directly I could ask him questions, get my answers. And then through him, I came to know Dr. Frawley and then Dr. Subhash Kak. So one thing led to the other. As you follow the trail, all
Right.
of these people, the Meenakshi Jain,
Right.
all these people, I mean, a lot of senior historians who have done good work, but for some reason they have been sidelined for quite a long time. Only
Yes.
now in the last 8 or 9 years
Eight
that
or
it
nine.
is.
So coming to, as you wrote two very interesting books on educational heritage. So one thing which I have noticed, and I must say I was also one of them, that when we talked about India's educational heritage, we just say, okay, there were some gurukuls, and we had this Bhaskaracharya and some mathematicians entered zero, and this is India's achievement, and that's it, as if India's past could not boast of any other achievements except having some gurukuls, and that too which people saw in Mahabharata or Ramayana TV shows, and knowing that okay, zero was invented in India and also. As many people are still unaware of about India's achievements, any specific things you would like to tell the audience about India's greatness of India's educational past? Any two three major points which you do highlight India's achievements in the past?
So what has happened is, because we are used to educational a system where there are concrete buildings and
Yes.
classrooms, so we cannot imagine that at a time in a forest, in a gurukul, you could be talking about such high and esoteric things,
Yes.
which are probably even too complex even for today.
For today.
So that's the thing. We have to get our mind off the present, the last 100 years, and imagine, go back to that time when actually they were in the midst of nature,
Yes.
studying nature and part of nature, and discovering things interesting. The foundation of whatever we call as science and knowledge today, all those foundational ideas came from those times.
Of course.
From Because it was also a state of meditation where they would
Yes.
purify their mind, the body, have a very good disciplined life, and then in that state, the kind of truths that came to them in that meditative state, those were absolutely amazing truths, amazing insights that they first passed down orally, and then it was written down. So I think what we do not know much about is probably we don't know those times. We tend to think of the past as very primitive, like
Yes.
they were probably not traveling much. We don't realize that they were traveling a lot. So even
Yes.
in those days, there were universities all over India, and those universities could be forest universities. There were buildings as well. I mean, later on, buildings were made, classrooms were made, and they didn't have any rigid views of how a class should be held.
Yes.
It can be held under a tree, it can be held in a room, it can be held anywhere. And for example, in Nalanda, 100 lectures were held in a day. So
Yes.
they were not necessarily all in big classrooms, right? There were classrooms, but some of them will be held out in the open. So we had those. We had students traveling from different places, far away places. They're crossing the mountains, they're sailing on rivers and seas to come and attend to get admission into these gurukulas and these universities, where there were very difficult entrance examinations. That is something a lot of people think dismiss. They don't think that how difficult could it have been. It must
Right.
have been informal. No, it was very strict. And the guru would determine whether a student is capable enough to take the knowledge which is given to him.
Yes.
Will he be able to let go of ego and not use that knowledge to show that, look, I know so much, and then try to push down his ideas on others. So all this, the adhikara aspect of the student used to be examined during the entrance examinations by
Yes.
the teachers. So that is something I think not many people know.
Right.
And the other thing I would like to highlight is that when we talk about Indian knowledge that went to the different parts of the world, people say that Buddhism went from India to China and went to Asia, East Asia. They don't realize it's not just Buddhism. It's not, Bauddha Dharma was just a
Yes.
framework, but it was the knowledge of sciences and mathematics and language, Sanskrit grammar. All that went along with that.
Yes.
So people don't realize that along with the Bauddha doctrine, there were all our sciences, all our knowledge went to different parts of the world, and Western Asia also. We tend to think of just knowledge which went to Europe, but on the eastern side, so much of knowledge
Yes.
spread out, Japan, Korea, all of them. And all these people used to come to India to study and
Yes.
copy the manuscripts. They would copy laboriously or get it copied by somebody. And it was very important to carry back those manuscripts to their own countries, where they would be translated into their own languages. And
Yes.
that's how we spread our knowledge. Not many people appreciate that. And I think they also don't appreciate the fact the sciences and arts were all welded together. So they
Yes.
tend to think that, okay, where is the science in this? This is all just some shlokas. Where is the science in this? So
Yes.
they don't understand that in the beautiful form of poetry, there is mathematics in it. There are calculations, there are formulae in it, and then they are being taught orally. So all those things have not been written down. Only the main, the shlokas have been written down, but the concepts are being explained orally, and commentaries that came later, which we have lost. We have
Yes.
lost so much of so many texts which were explaining these things. So the proofs of various theorems that were put forward. So one of the accusations made is that Indian mathematicians don't give proof for whatever
Yes. Yes.
they claim, but the proof used to be actually given while teaching, and it used to be in the commentaries. So we have lost a lot of work. I mean, there's no end to what we don't know. Even
Right.
I am discovering as I'm going on that.
Right.
The other thing I want to say is there was no, the huge distinction between North India, South India, East India, West India. That was just not there.
Yeah.
So
Right.
it's like people of South are traveling freely to the North, and North people coming to the South. So, for example, Bihar, Mithila University, one of the most famous centers of knowledge, it was under the rulers who are from Karnataka.
Karnataka.
People who are from from Karnataka ruling over Bihar, and Mithila culture is thriving. Imagine. And
This
same way, my
regionalism is more of a recent construct and not there in the in the past, of course.
absolutely. So it's like we were very, very mixed up. We were all, there was
Right.
no huge this concept of North Indians and South Indians and all that.
Right.
Knowledge was knowledge, very deeply respected. So in all these universities, the professors came from different parts of India. So Vallabi was set up, Vallabi in Gujarat university was set up by people from Nalanda who are in the east. And professors in Nalanda were, many of them are from the south of India. And then if you go to China and see some of the professors, they were from South India as well.
South Indians.
So that is the level of mobility and flow of knowledge.
I think definitely in the past we were more united as a nation, and when we did not have identities like I am a Tamilian or I am a Punjabi or I am a Bihari or I am a Kannad. And I think one of the things you talked about in your books was about debating. That debating was taken as an art, which I would say it's in stark contrast to the kind of debates today we see on TV, wherein we get too much personal or speaking without having even sufficient knowledge on the subject someone is supposed to. So how do you see aspects such as debating? I mean, we talk of a holistic education when we talk about India's past. So it's not only philosophy, it's not only sciences, but rather an overall holistic development. So what's your take on that, on the holistic development of a kid?
So holistic development, yes, it was. So let me just talk about debating. So the debating traditions of India were very well known, and they
Yes.
were rigorous. They were very interesting. So that even when Zhuangzhang from China came to India, he said that we do have debating in China, but the level of debating I'm seeing here in Nalanda is just way beyond what we
Yes.
ever did. So I'm very glad I came here. Of course, he also became a very good debater, and he was a very good student and a teacher.
Yes.
So the debating tradition was very, very important, because that is how, very scientifically the philosophy would be taken forward.
Yes.
And people who are listening to it will also increase in their knowledge by seeing the two sides of a debate, both
Exactly.
pro and con. And for example, this University of Navadvip in Bengal, which was a very important center of logic and debate, there even the professors used to be selected on the basis of debate.
Debate.
So to select a professor to teach there, he has to prove himself in a debate. He
Yes.
has to stand up against his opponents and put forward his points very well. And then only an assembly of scholars will select him as a professor to teach. So, and this is the level of debate that we had. And yes, it's in stark contrast to what we see today in debates or in TV debates,
Right.
because we don't have all, it was a subject in itself.
Yes. Of
Tarka was a
course. Of
subject in
course.
itself. Yeah, that. So holistic education that we talked about. So they had to develop not only they had to not only have a knowledge of every subject that they were being taught, but they also had to be strong in character.
Yes. Of
So their
course.
character was given equal importance, because to have the shraddha, to let go of ego. So the guru would constantly be monitoring the holistic personality of the
Yes.
student, and that's why each student had sometimes a different curriculum. So this
Yes.
student would be grilled in something else, whereas another student will be grilled in another topic, or another, or something related to the personality as well.
Yes.
Because every so you can't just be in isolation very good in your subject, because
Right.
then you can't go very far.
Yes.
You have to be eventually a teacher. So
Exactly.
every student will eventually become a teacher and teach the next generation. So
Yes.
does he have the ability to do that? And this was part of the holistic training that they got.
Right.
uh, and of course, nature, the thing is being centered in nature was so important. The seasons, which part of the year is it, what are the plants growing at this time, what are the pujas that we focus on, the sadhana that we must be doing. All this went along with whatever they
Yes.
were gathering, the data of information, that the mass
Right.
data that we were learning. And memory training was very important, because today you see we all have very, very low level memory. We
Yes. Of
just
memory.
outsource
Yes.
everything, and that affects our cognition. uh,
Yes.
so, your, so cognition actually improves tremendously as you learn techniques of memory retention.
Memory.
So
Yes.
in those days, because of the high memory training given, they were able to remove lot of things which would all come to their help at different times in their life. So when you're facing different situations, if you're able to remember what the Shastra said about this, and it'll immediately inspire you. It will
Yes. Yes.
help you. So all this went into the holistic development of the people, the students.
Right. So one more important thing about ancient heritage when you talk about the condition of women and especially about education of women. So it is like believed and as seen in several movies and all that, women were not, it was not a priority for women because they had to get married and, they had to settle into another household. So education was not really a priority for women, and it's only to the boys who would be educated. And when it comes to, choosing, they would prefer the boy to get studied and also, and which many, you can say, left liberals take an advantage and say that, see, this is what the Hindu society is. But as you mentioned in your book about the education given to women, so if you would like to tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so education for women was very, very important, as it was for men. Okay, and there were so many learned women. And if you see the Vedas, right, in the Vedas there are Rig Vedas, so many
Yes.
shlokas that we chant have come from women.
Right.
So which we have to chant every day. So there were Brahma Vadinis, who were women who went into very high advanced learning, and they did not get married, and they only focused on their learning. So those women were there. Of course, they were not the majority. But even otherwise, if you look at the working class women, they most of them were part of different trades, different jatis, which were in different lines of profession, right? So it could
Right.
be weaving, it could be medicine, it could, Ayurvedic, the Vaidya families, sculpting, whatever, different professions, right? And in these families, everybody would be involved in that business, and so that knowledge would be, all of them would have that knowledge. They would all go
Right.
through the stages where they learned
Yeah.
all that. It is no question of exclusion of women.
Yes.
And of course, we have, we have ceremonies where girls and boys are both initiated into reading and writing.
Indeed.
Why would they have that if women are not supposed to study?
Right.
And knowing that as a mother, she would be the first teacher of the child,
Of the child. Exactly.
first teacher. So it was very important for her to have the right frameworks in her mind. She should understand. She should understand the basics of subjects at least, if she doesn't want to go into higher level
Higher
education.
level education.
And if you, Dr. Bharat Gupt, if you listen to him, he has gone deeply into Manusmriti, Kama Sutra, and all these texts, and he was telling us about how the husband is also supposed to continue the wife's
Exactly.
education. So
Exactly.
if that's a bright woman, bright girl who has always excelled, she's got married. Now the husband, it will be very shameful if the husband doesn't continue her education. So he would have
Right.
to himself teach her if he is better than her and he knows, or he has to call a teacher and ensure that her education continues. So that
Continues.
was there. But I would like to say that it eventually depended on the woman herself. How driven was she to get knowledge
Okay.
in a certain subject,
Right.
which is the same today. I mean,
Yes.
today also, if a girl doesn't want to study, nobody can push her to go and do it.
Butcher.
If she wants to study, nothing will stop her. You have a lot of
Understand.
instances where even in poor families, no income, no money, and you hear about these women succeeding, fighting
Yes.
all odds. So that level of that spirit was needed even in those times. So
Yes.
what we must understand is that knowledge itself was considered feminine. Vidya was feminine.
Exactly.
The goddess of knowledge,
The
the
goddess
god
is this.
that we
Yes.
pray to, every
Yeah.
student prays to. So there is no question of a woman
Women.
not being educated. And it's explicitly mentioned in Yajurveda that, a woman will, Yajurveda, Atharva Veda, where it indicates that a woman will not find a good husband if she is not
If she,
educated. So make sure you get a good education so that at least you will get a good husband
yes.
of your level.
Yes.
So all that is there.
You did mention this in your book, and this came as a revelation to me because all my life when I was in school or college, I was taught that तुम लड़के हो, तुम्हें तो job करना है, शादी करना है, so you should be good in studies, else
correct.
you will not get a good match.
Right.
And we used to say कि the girls are better off कि उनको tension नहीं है पढ़ाई की, शादी हो जाएंगी. This was the result of what we were taught. But the reality is actually different, as one of the things I got to know from your book, that for women it was considered equally important that they should be, they should be studying and they should be good at what they are doing.
And if I may just add one thing, that the biggest evidence I found was a sculpture or a carving of Savinir Madi in Karnataka. In the Kolar district, they found a carving of a woman who is clearly a scholar. She's holding manuscripts in her hand, and she looks, her head is tied up in a bun on the top, like one of the rishis, and below it is written that this is a Savinir Madi who is an expert in shastras. So you can make out that the villagers have put up her sculpture, her carving, because they respect her so much for her knowledge.
Exactly.
Okay, she's not some royal family or anything. She's an ordinary person. Just her name and her mother's name and father's name are mentioned, and
Right.
that she's a great scholar. So this is a direct evidence we have of women being educated.
Of course. So when we talk about the ancient the heritage of India, how do you think the society which produced great scholars, which made strides in things such as mathematics, sciences, medicine, Charak Samhita and all, as we know, how do you think this society degenerated, and wherein today, if we talk, or even if we don't talk about, say, post-independence, but by the time Britishers were there, how do you think this degeneration happened, that what we were there, say, some hundreds of years ago, we are nowhere close to, you can say, producing similar quality of intellectuals and researches being done in India. I mean, there are many people who have shined abroad and not in India. If you talk of top 100 universities, hardly any university of India finds mention there. So how do you think this degeneration happened over the centuries, I would say?
So I would say that, of course, it's a very sad story. Our whole ecosystem of learning was destroyed, right? So
Yes.
we were this flourishing set of kingdoms that are all encouraging university education. All the mathas were flourishing. Students can go and study in whatever subject they like.
Yes.
But then suddenly came this onslaught of invasions, one after
Yes.
the other. And the worst was, of course, we know the Muslim invasions starting from the 12th century, which led to the direct destruction of universities. So
Yes.
there's no denying. You can see that all this Nalanda, Vikramshila, Udantapura, all of them razed to the ground, libraries burnt, and scholars who managed to survive carrying their manuscripts and fleeing to wherever they would get, whichever kingdom would give them shelter. And then after a point of time, the Islamic pressure reaches even those countries where they have taken shelter. So that's the way education and learning, the whole milieu was destroyed in India. And it happened in many phases, right? So, for example, the scholars fled to South India in the beginning. And so in South India came up a new center of several more centers of education, or they fled to Kashmir in the beginning. Then
Yes.
Kashmir itself came under that
Yes.
the sword. So
Yes.
that is how slowly that whole culture which we had, that
Exactly.
society we had started getting destroyed, where the everybody is donating to educational institutions, right? It was, if you read the history of Punjab and Sindh, even written by the white people, the colonizers, you will see that it was that kind of a place where people were donating to pathshalas, and it
Yes.
was considered very good. Even a criminal would redeem himself by donating to a pathshala, because now he can say that I donated. So that is the culture. All that started going away due to the invasions. But the final, I think, nail in the coffin was colonization by the
Colonization.
Europeans, wherein they actually made the people feel inferior.
Yes.
But now that the people were disconnected from their culture, and they had
Exactly.
become impoverished now because of the huge taxes imposed by the British. And so now the traditional scholars now were forced to work in the fields, were forced to do other jobs, and lose touch with all the knowledge they had. So science knowledge all started going away, logic started going away. Uh,
Yes.
you see the description of the Nabadvip University, which was a big center of logic. Huge debates used to be held there, scientific debates. And now suddenly they're all very poor. They don't, if the teacher has no food to eat, and he's
Right.
somehow trying to keep up that education, but he's not able to, right? Because people don't have the money to give anymore. So that's how it degenerated. And then a new education system was imposed on the people, an alien system by the British, with
Yes.
an English as a medium of education, wherein, that whole deracination started, where the natives themselves think that they are inferior and they have to
Yes.
learn from the colonizers,
Exactly.
and they feel very grateful to them for whatever they are learning, and whatever handouts they get, whatever they are taught, they take it very thirstily. So that was, I think, very bad. That destroyed our pride. Our knowledge of Sanskrit went away. And then
Yes.
came, even after independence, that same policy was continued, the same colonial policies. In fact, it was literally like we were still being ruled by the British after they
Yes.
left. And so we were just reading our own great epics, like, like comic books are giving us our stories, not
Yes.
through, oral tradition.
Amar
Um,
Chitrakatha and all, people got to know
right,
from
exactly.
them only. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So then what happened, that we now were totally inoculated by the Western beliefs, and we were made
Yes.
to believe that science has come from the West, and we lost connection with our scientific treatises, our
Yes.
Shulba Sutras, and our works by Brahmagupta, Bhaskaracharya. What have they done? We lost all that. And we couldn't read anymore. We couldn't read our
Yes.
ancient texts or
Exactly.
anything anymore. So that's how our sciences got destroyed.
For many people of especially the some in the 20s 30s, many of them actually believe that India actually started when either the Mughals came or the British, and there was practically nothing called India. They kind of united India, or they established India as we know. So it's like one example given is that the Mughals were they were a long running empire, but it was not the Mughals. There were several other empires in India itself, which ran for long durations, and people don't know. They only think when we talk of empire or some king, it's only the Mughals. And the Vijayanagar kingdom was the one which lasted for the longest period, but many people actually don't know. They just believe when you talk of the kings and rajas and all, it's just the Mughals. So one, yeah, yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, this is all complete nonsense that the British united India. Yes, we
Yeah,
united in resisting them, but there was always Sanatana Dharma which united India. right?
Yes.
And even after the British left, you mean there were so many provinces, right? So many princely states which were all not united. That was done much
Definitely.
later. So we were united in our spirit, in our thought, in our traditions, but we were not like one nation, you know, like we were not like a monotheistic nation,
Yes.
because our whole tradition is built on diversity. So we
Diversity.
absorb different ideas, beliefs, you know, that there might be tribes who are following certain customs, and there are these Brahmins who are following the Vedic custom, and we are all interrelated, and we are all connected. That understanding
Yes.
was there, right?
Yes.
So the consciousness was always there. We were united. But what the British did is, in fact, destroyed us, destroyed a lot
Yes.
of our traditions. And
Yes.
then, just for uniformity of administration, they did some kind of fake unity, you can say. So
Yes.
I don't think that what they did was helpful in any way.
And
It
anyway.
wasn't. Way better in the earlier period when we were having variety of kingdoms. We were way better. We were doing better in terms of free flow of scholars, free flow of
Yes.
knowledge, right? That was actually better.
So, in fact, talking about the diversity, some scholars also argue that the caste system in Hinduism actually saved Hinduism from degeneration and further divisions, or complete, you can say, kind of annihilation of Hinduism because of the invasions. Although that is not to justify the casteism which is being played out these days, but it's a diversity. The caste system will actually help the Hindu society in a way, and people such as even Mahatma Gandhi, used to say that caste system actually saved the Hindu Dharma from a complete, you can say, degeneration or complete annihilation in the hands of, other religionists. So, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so the thing is, we must be careful and not call it the caste system. So it was
Yeah,
the
it's
Kula
burnt. Yeah,
Varna Jati system.
yes,
It was very helpful because that helped us to preserve our identities. So all of them were proud of their identities. So whether,
yes,
I mean, a caste system made it like low, high, and everything. So whether it's a potter Jati, or whether it is a metal working Jati, they all were proud of the knowledge they had and the work they were doing, and
yes,
they were respected by others in the society who depended on them. So it was an interdependent
yes,
society wherein all these different professions were being preserved, their traditions, their cultures. At the
yes,
same time, there was understanding भगवान is एक ही है, हम
yes.
सबका भगवान एक ही है,
Thank you.
लेकिन आपको दूसरा काम दिया गया है, हमें दूसरा काम दिया गया है.
Yes,
That kind of understanding was there, and it was helpful in preserving knowledge 100%, because
yes,
you know what, that if you have this responsibility that you have to preserve your fathers and grandfathers and your grandparents, great grandparents knowledge, then you will work hard to preserve that knowledge. Now
preserve this.
you think that अरे ये मैं चूज करूंगा, मुझे करना है कि नहीं करना है, मैं चल मैं उधर जाऊंगा कुछ और करूंगा. Then if
Yes,
everybody does that, then that ancestral wealth of knowledge is lost.
will be lost.
So
Yes,
they had that sense of responsibility, like a Vaidya's, so thousands of years of Vaidya knowledge being preserved, the Ayurveda knowledge. They didn't just go away into different professions and leave that
yes,
knowledge unexplored. They kept it alive. So in that sense, knowledge was preserved,
yes,
and the society was preserved, because all
yes,
of them now, we have enough number of people who are making sculptures. We have enough number of people who are giving medicines, who are there at just looking after the health needs of the society. We have enough number of carpenters now to make what we need in the house. So in that way, society was preserved, and it made us very rich. We became hugely rich. We were the richest country in the world because of this Varna Jati system.
under that system.
So that is something we should appreciate. But that doesn't mean that today, after the British mauled the society and destroyed it, and
Yes,
then we have this, they did a caste survey, put everybody into a different caste, and they froze it in time. We were never frozen in time.
yes,
So like if
exactly.
there are 10 children who are born into a certain family, if 2-3 children go into some other profession or into some other, then they change the jati, change even the varna. That also
Yes,
happened. That didn't. That was fine. But now, once the survey was done, now the surnames are now associated with a certain caste,
yes,
and that on the basis of that they are getting jobs. So now
yes,
it is totally, what you're seeing is just a total distortion of what it
yes,
was meant to be. And definitely, I don't want the caste system that we have today, wherein
yes,
politics, votes are given on the basis of caste. Somebody
yes.
is appointed to a position on the basis of caste. That is a rotten system that we should not have at all.
Right, of
Right.
course.
Another thing I want
So,
to say is that
yeah,
temples, just a minute that I want to take to explain
no,
that
please. Yeah,
temples
please.
were also preserved by certain kulas, right? So a person from a certain family, the head, the eldest person will take care of a certain temple, all the traditions of
Yes.
the temple, and that's how those temples were being preserved. So when you destroy that tradition, then now it falls into the government's hand, and the government will have a very secular way of looking at the traditions and saying, what is this? We don't need this tradition, we don't need this custom, and they destroy
Yes.
it. So all
Yes.
those Kula also preserves, Kulas preserve the temple traditions.
Of course. So we talked about the impact of invasions and then the colonial rule, which, as you said, was the final nail in the coffin of this entire thing. So, but now it's been like more than 75 years of independence. Why you think that things did not change after independence when we were governed by our own people? There were invasions, there was a colonial rule, which was some other country when coming and ruling us. But when we were ruled by our own people, why you think not much stress was laid on Indic knowledge systems as is being done today, even though not directly from the government, but we have scholars like you and other people who are writing about this, researching. So why you think things did not change after independence?
Yeah, so because we were the colonizers did a very thorough job. We should give an award to Macaulay for doing such a thorough job of indoctrinating everybody. So right, starting from our first prime minister, who was totally indoctrinated, he didn't. He understood India through the alien eyes, completely
Aliens.
colonizers' view of India. In fact, there are places where he says he doesn't like our the temples. He found certain temples very
Yeah.
repulsive and all that. So basically, we were ruled by our ruling class was completely deracinated. So they found no value to continue to bringing back our ancient knowledge systems or preserving Indian knowledge systems. They just were in this whole drive to westernize and modernize because they
Yes.
saw modernization as the same as westernization, and
Westernization.
that's how So we were completely that slave mentality continued.
Yes.
Absolute slave mentality. We continue to be part of the Commonwealth, and English was more and more becoming the medium of education. And through English, the meanings of all the shlokas was being conveyed, which was
Yes.
totally wrong. And so we were misinterpreting and misunderstanding our own culture and tradition, and we were getting distance from it. And then we were completely isolating. We were saying we are not part of that. We are not those people. We are more like the white people, the British people. So
Yes.
we were looking. See, this self-loathing is extremely destructive.
Yes.
Ultimately, it never lets you know your true self. So
True,
we
sir.
didn't know our true self, and we were just in a world of superficiality, and it led to all these problems that we see today. There's no character. We don't even like. It's so astonishing. I'm also part of the. I used to be a part of the problem. I hope I'm now on the right path. So when I went to Japan, and there was my hostess was taking me around and showing me different temples, and after some time I started getting tired. I said I want to sit down, and she was like in her 70s, and she wasn't tired at all. So I said, what's the secret of your youth? And she was saying, I do yoga every day, I do pranayama, and I was feeling so ashamed that look at these people, they didn't get deracinated, right? They
Right.
took our knowledge, they stayed true to their culture, and that's how they were progressing. So in every aspect of their lives, I could see that they have taken our knowledge and have deeply
Yes.
imbibed it, whereas we had lost it. Even at a
Lost.
physical level, our knowledge systems are important, not just at the mental level.
Right.
Physical level, all those the yoga, the pranayama, that focus that we need, all that has went away because we were not connected to our holistic knowledge systems.
Right.
So I think that's what happened.
As it is the said that it was important colonization of the mind more than anything else,
Hmm.
which ensured that colonization in some form or the other even continues till this day. The methods might have changed, but in some way or the other, we are still being ruled by what the Westerners say, some of the global standards or anything which we say. It's still a reflection and imprint of colonialism,
Right.
just to say in a more sophisticated manner. So that's definitely. But fortunately, we have, as I said, authors like you, J. Saindeepa, Vikram Sampath, and lot many who are ensuring that we get to know, not only we get to read the right history, not
Hmm.
and looking at it from the angle of left or right, but what is actually there. As he talked about his book in Savarkar, that what Savarkar said or something, that it's not about eulogizing him or demeaning him, but
Hmm.
firstly to understand what he was, rather
Yes.
than firstly getting into whether he was right or wrong, or whether it's good or bad. And unfortunately, that thing is lost. We, in the name of liberal values, what we were fed was mostly the Marxist left liberal ecosystem, which is very much one-sided. But fortunately, we have people like you who are, working hard to make sure the right message, reaches the masses. So one thing about, you have worked extensively on this. So any advices for aspiring writers who want to write about India's past? Any word of advice?
Yeah, I think the word of advice would be to read more, to learn Sanskrit right in the beginning, because I think that was a big impediment to me,
Okay.
not knowing, not having studied Sanskrit in my childhood. I was always in missionary schools. So,
Okay.
of course, even missionary schools do teach Sanskrit nowadays, some of them. But in my time, I didn't have any Sanskrit education, though I could have, because I came from a family of Sanskrit scholars. And I think a part of the blame also lies with the earlier generation, which allowed us to get so westernized, so colonized,
Yes.
because
Yes.
they could have put their foot down and made sure that we got that Sanskrit education. But I
Right.
think they also somewhere felt that, okay, for getting a job, for making a living, it's good to get a Western modern education. So yeah, I would say go and learn your own native languages as much as you can, reading, writing, learn, speak to your all the elders in your family, learn about the books written in that language, and
Yes.
try to understand what is there in those books. So for example, in Kannada, in my mother tongue is Kannada, though I have sing my husband is a Rajput, but I am a Kannadiga. So I'm discovering something new written in Kannada every day. I still haven't learned how to read Kannada, because it's that much time I've not been able to devote, but I want to. But I keep learning about books which were written 100 years ago, 200 years ago in Kannada, which are very valuable. If you
Right.
read them, there is so much knowledge in them. There are books on physics, there are books on medicine, so many things. So know your language, know Sanskrit. Sanskrit is very important because it helps you to read the texts in the original. Not all texts, you will still need a lot of help from other scholars, but at least you'll start getting a bit of your own lenses back.
Yes.
And be thorough with Ramayana and Mahabharata. These are very important texts which teach you a lot. So I would say read as much of your text as you can, and see what value they can add to today, right?
Right.
And then try to understand the meaning of the rituals and customs that we are following. They also have hold lot of secrets, which
Yes.
we need to decode, right? So if you're doing something for hundreds of years, what is the reasoning behind it? When you try to find out, that already will lead you to a lot of science, a lot
Yes.
of botanical knowledge, a lot of medical knowledge. So I think that is something you should do. I would also say keep an open mind. They don't perceive the West as evil. I'm seeing a lot of that in a lot of these right wing people. I don't like to use the word right wing, but I'm sometimes forced to do that. That we should not always perceive everything in context of left and right,
Yes. Yes.
European and Indian,
Yes.
because at the root of it, knowledge is knowledge,
Knowledge.
and eventually what we call Western is also from our knowledge, which has a lot of it has been distorted and
Yes.
fed back to us. So let us just look at knowledge without that any kind of bias, and also see that whether the West has something to offer us, by way of tools to understand something. And
Right.
I would say that. So when you start writing, don't have this us versus them approach. Even
Right.
though you understand the differences, try to also see whether there is this. Read a lot of books in other languages also. For example, I mean, there's no harm in learning French and Spanish
Right.
and other languages, because in remember, we a lot of our books were translated to all these languages.
Yes. Yes.
When the destruction happened, before the destruction happened, many texts had already found their way to the West, and they were translated to Chinese, for example.
Yes.
I think learning Chinese would be very useful to us, because we literally built the knowledge systems of China.
Yes.
Our scholars set up their departments of astronomy, set up departments for them. So if we, in Chinese, we are able to read what is written, what is translated, or what is written about India, it will be
Yes.
very valuable to us. So we need to, because we lost touch with our knowledge, it
Of
can come
course.
to us from other places.
In fact, it's true. I mean, many of the Western scholars, not all, they had a not only a positive view on India, but they Also, for example, Benjamin Franklin, what he talked about game of chess, which was
Yes.
mentioned in the book.
Yes.
I bet many people know about Benjamin Franklin, but they might not be knowing about his views on chess. It's not just a game for fun, and
Yes.
its lies, its importance lies far beyond that. So I think it's again when we criticize, we just do cherry picking and say that okay, this is what happened. But even when the Westerners praise us, India called the cradle of human civilization by Westerners, and many of us would not actually be, knowing that. We are more fascinated by when the New York Times or someone criticizes, say, Diwali festival or saying things like that. But we remember that. But unfortunately, not this thing, which again is said by Westerners. Even when we wear a Western lens, I think we are too much into, cherry picking that, okay, this was good, so let's ignore that. So Manjul Bhargav, the one who won the
Yes.
Fields Medal in maths, he mentioned that, I read my grandfather's uh, text in Sanskrit, which helped me in
Right.
becoming the mathematician that I am today. But interestingly, I noticed that this was not good news for probably the media and all, to say that, we have a lot of knowledge, in our ancient text, which can and should be encouraged. And here is a Nobel Prize winner in mathematics is saying that. So this
Yes. That's
selective
an
bias
example I
is,
love to give. I love to give Manjul Bhargava's example because he made
yeah,
use of our ancient knowledge uh,
exactly.
to win the highest medal in mathematics today.
Yes,
So that
yes,
knowledge is still relevant. He proved
it's still
that today.
relevant.
Yes,
But
and we need to do that too. So there is,
of
if we read our texts, if we read them in the original, we can
yes,
actually present all those things, and we should also reclaim that knowledge, by the way, because
yes,
the patents which are being taken for, like what happened with neem, the neem patent was taken away, right? So a lot of people are mining our
yes,
knowledge systems, taking patents away from India. We should
yes,
reclaim. So unless we know the language, unless we know Sanskrit and we are able to read those texts and reclaim that knowledge, we'll soon lose everything. So
yes.
that's also a practical reason why we need to know our knowledge, know our knowledge systems.
Certain, most certain. So we'll open it for the audience now. I think there was already one question, and all those who are watching, please write your questions, and Sahana ma'am will answer that. So I think there was already a question. This is from Swati Shukla. I have a question. What steps parents of young kids can take to inculcate the real Indic essence?
I think there are a lot of things you can do. Like for my daughter, I made sure that she always, now like I grew up, because she grew up in Singapore and then in America. So I made sure that she always felt this love for India.
Yes,
So all these stories, the stories of from the Puranas, the epics, I made sure that she knew all of them. And then also have a faith in Bhagwan. I think that's very important,
right.
so that Bhagwan is there. What and all our gods, our deities, they are, why are they important for us? So that love with all these deities, for these deities, should be there right from beginning. Okay,
Of course.
so a little bit of puja, teaching them how to do the puja, inculcate discipline in them. That every morning after you wake up, light the lamp, do some at an appropriate age, of course. Teach them some rituals which will keep them rooted, and then history. I think it's very important for parents to be aware of our history, so that then at the age in the age appropriate manner, they can keep teaching the children about this.
Yes.
In this way, I was because I was reading Dr. Rajaram and Dr. Frawley. I was always telling the summary of all these books. I was sharing it with my daughter, so she always knew the real history of India. So I
Right.
think parents need to do that. And of course, I say this very often, that parents also need to be cool. I mean, cool in the sense that the children respect them and want to follow them. Now, if you
Yes.
are somebody who is not keeping up with the times at all, and you come across as a very old person, very rigid person, then the children want to break away from you and from the parents and say, "Oh, I don't, and I don't, I don't listen to them. I don't have to be
Yes.
like that." So that feeling should not come. So be close to the children, understand their problems, why they are behaving in a certain way, be their best friends, because then slowly they will follow whatever you're.
Yes.
So
Of
if you're
course.
just talking down to them all the time, then a point will come when they'll hide things from you. They'll not tell
Yes.
you what they're doing, what they're thinking, and it will be just a superficial relationship.
Right. So we have this is not a question but an observation by Aman Ujjwal. Government has done nothing to stop this kind of indoctrination. Most of the left-leaning faculties in universities only glorify Mughals. For that matter, they even opportunistically ignore the Marathas. So, ma'am, your take on this?
No, I absolutely agree with Aman. I know him, and he's doing a lot of good work in this area in getting the books to the libraries and all
Oh,
that.
wonderful.
If it's the same Aman. Uh, so the thing is that yes, the government has really not understood. Though we do have a friendly government right now, but I think they still are not going about it completely the right way. I mean, they have set up the committees and everything. Now there's a new education policy and everything, but I think things are moving very slowly, and I think there's some politics going on also. I don't think people are working together and contributing. I think that's the reason why things are moving slowly.
Right.
And I don't think Gurukulas are being promoted. Gurukulas are still living a hand-to-mouth existence. So I think there are lots of ideas that we all have, I think, which I wish the government would listen to us. Um, yes, I think the textbooks we are changing is happening very slowly. It's not happening fast enough. And
Right.
even to change the textbooks, do they have what do they want to put in there? Are we because I mean, when I look at my nephew's textbooks in Bangalore, I still see that they are saying that the world, the who's that person who went around the earth, Magellan.
Yeah.
Only when he went around the earth, then we came to know that the earth is round. Those things
Yes.
are there, right? It's so
Yeah.
easy to change this. When I mean, we can thoroughly look at the textbooks and remove all these things which are meaningless. We coming from an
Yes.
ancient civilization should not even be having these kind of things about
Exactly.
earth being round discovered by somebody in Europe. Oh,
Um,
come on. I mean, look at all our ancient shastras going back thousands of years. Surya Siddhanta, which already is talking about the earth as a globe,
yeah.
as a sphere. Yeah, so we need those scholars from all over India working together, giving their inputs, so that our textbooks are written properly at all levels, from the primary to the advanced levels. So I think, yeah,
Certainly.
it's not happening fast enough. The good books are also not being found in the library. I'm hearing
Yes.
that there's only one copy of books written by people like me,
Yeah.
whereas there are four, five, six, or maybe 10 copies of somebody written something written by these leftists.
Leftist. Yes.
Absolutely hate-filled books. You'll find many copies of those,
Yes. Yes.
right?
That's
So I think we
unfortunate.
are not countering enough. We are not fast enough. We are not swift enough to counter all these negative forces.
Of course. So there's one
What is
more
the sound
question.
coming?
Yeah. Sorry.
Is there a sound coming?
Yeah, I'm wondering where it is coming from. There's some kind of alarm going on.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Are you able to hear me anyway?
I can hear you, but I think it will be disturbing the
Yeah.
other people, maybe.
I'm a little surprised where it is coming from in the room. Just let me check once.
Okay,
So I think it's over. I don't know where it came from. Okay, so
it's
there's
fine.
one question. So we'll take this last question. I think we're on top of time. So this is again from Swati Shukla. Any opinion on Bharatiya Shiksha Board?
Sorry?
Any opinion on Bharatiya Shiksha Board?
Oh, okay. I think it sounds like a good idea, but I've not really explored to see who all are there in it and what are they doing. I mean, the idea is definitely good that we have a board like that. I mean, if you have ICSE and CBSE, then why not a Bharatiya Shiksha Board?
Right.
But again, these things take time to do good work. Just forming it is not enough. What are the methodologies in place? I am not sure of that. Who are the people in charge? But yeah, I am so far I have not been asked to give input anywhere, so I don't know how it's going on. Yeah, I mean there are a lot of initiatives, but I'm not seeing right now the impact on the ground.
All right. So I have one quick question before we end this session. How do you think we would be able to reconcile our ancient heritage with the modern times, wherein we are talking of things like artificial intelligence, nuclear sciences, and robotics and whatnot? How do you see that reconciliation? We want to definitely don't let go of our past, and at the same time we have challenges like these AI and all that. So how do you think that reconciliation can happen?
No, I don't think there's any discrepancy between our ancient knowledge systems and AI or anything in the modern times, right? Because there is our knowledge systems never said that technology has to be kept away, because we are the ones who gave the logic, all the
Yes.
tools which helped you to develop these things, right? I mean, where was how did we come up with programming if we did not have the tools of logic that came
Right.
from India, right? Nyaya Shastra. So I think
Right.
there's not an issue at all. What we should still be doing is we should be studying Nyaya Shastra. All it was a whole discipline, a very rigorous discipline of logic, which should
Yes.
be compulsory for us, because it will make us better programmers. It will help us to work better with artificial intelligence and whatever else you call modern. So Nyaya Shastras, and then the Panchanga, the Jyotisha knowledge is very important for us to understand astronomy. And remember, everything, the tools of logic were being applied to all schools of Indian philosophy. So I think knowing about our knowledge systems will only enhance us,
Right.
because we'll get our lenses back, and
Yes.
using those lenses, we can still do whatever we are doing, whether it's programming, artificial intelligence, or anything, any modern tools or technologies that we are using, just that our lenses will now be Indic. And in fact, that'll be good for us. Now we'll be looking at whether in the long run, will this be used for the good of the people? Will it be good for nature? Are we going to destroy forests? Are we going to destroy nature by using this technology in a certain way? That awareness will come if you are rooted,
Yes.
if
Yes.
you're well versed with your knowledge systems. So I think there can be a beautiful transition. All these subjects need to be, we need to prepare courses in all these ancient knowledge systems so that they are taught in a way that is relevant for today. And then,
Right.
of course, we can study all the modern subjects along with it. And that's what I,
Certainly.
yeah.
All right. So I think this is it. We are on top of time. So thank you very much, all those who have joined. And ma'am, thank you very much for joining us. It was a very interesting, I would say, very important session for all of us. I'll soon be posting this video on YouTube, and I hope that more and more people actually watch this video to understand India's Asian heritage much better. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me.